All right, good morning. Welcome back here to Trader Minute. Great to have you aboard. Doing something a little bit different here this morning. It is pre-market, not making any challenge adjustments or doing anything like that. But I did want to kind of set the stage for what we're looking at here this morning. You can see the close of the market yesterday, and that's what I have on my screen. And I've zoomed into the S&P futures, and we saw this rally from about 29.28 up to 29.33. It's a 5 point rally, no big deal, just not anything unusual. And in fact, the next minute it gets erased. In the closing action, that's just not all that unusual. But in the next 4 minutes, we saw a further sell to where the market sold off basically 10 points in the last 5 minutes. Now, in a very highly volatile, choppy market, that's not incredibly unusual, but we're not dealing in an incredibly volatile, choppy market. We're dealing in a mild one, but it is one of those where, I was texting with my brother, and I just said, man, that close, what's it say? It says we have some news coming. And, what is that news going to be? Who knows? Who knew? Whatever. But we have some news coming. And, we go overnight. We watch S&P futures kind of play out overnight. And I'll zoom out. And you can see S&P futures, they go down to a new low here just before the Asian Open, and then they rally on back. They start to climb. They get back up to the highs that we're seeing right before the close. And, then we get this kind of stagnation here during the European session, and then we get whoosh. Where S&P futures go from 29.34 down to 29.02, 32-point drop here in a matter of minutes. And this is the news. This is news out of China that they are going to implement another 75 billion in tariffs here on the U.S., and mostly agriculture goods, vehicle components, that type of thing. And, S&P futures fell to yesterday's lows, essentially. We see them starting to climb back here just a little bit, marching on back just a little bit off the lows here. But that's what we're seeing create some of the volatility here this morning. Now, we still have Fed Chair Powell, set to speak here. And his speech will be... his speech is almost always released ahead of time before he starts to speak. So, every time he has one of these, it runs just a little bit differently. But, that should be one of those where, we hear, we hear him after the speech is released. Now, the speech is most likely going to be released at 8 o'clock my time, 10 o'clock Eastern, and that's right along with the new home sales data, but the market's not going to watch the new home sales data. It's going to be looking at Fed Powell's speech. So, a lot still going on here today, a lot, for the markets to process, for the markets to digest. We will be seeing a gap lower, at least as it sits, and due to the China tariff news here. It's nothing that we haven't seen, for months now, but it does continue to reinforce some of this slog, some of this chop that just will not, the market just cannot shake yet. And, you can see kind of what that looks like if I back out to a 1-hour chart of futures, right? It's not exactly a massive monster breakdown, but it's just kind of continuing in this kind of slog range here. And, investors be a little worried, okay, how does U.S. President Trump respond? I would suspect we're not going to see a big response out of the U.S. Since, this is a fairly mild response out of China. I think when you look at it, U.S. threatened $300 billion in new tariffs, and China comes back with $75 billion. and to implement in two stages, one in September, one in December. So there's room for them not to kick in. How's that drama all going to play out? Well, we've talked about that many times, and it can play out in so many different ways that to sit and predict which way it's going to play out isn't necessarily a productive game from a market standpoint or from a trading standpoint here. So anyway, that's what's going on here this morning. I will be on with you normal time here an hour after the market opens, and we'll adjust Micron or Visa as needed. Both are probably going to gap down here. I would assume with the with the market, but both are going to probably move when Chair Powell speaks here later on this morning, and about 30 minutes after the Powell speech is released, I will jump on video here at 10:30 a.m. Thanks for hopping on. Have yourself a fantastic day, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.